Israeli troops entered Khan Yunis today, which is the first target in Israel's expanded ground offensive in southern Gaza, claiming they were engaged in the most intense day of battle since the ground war began nearly a month ago. The attack has been ferocious and includes areas where Palestinians have been told to seek shelter. According to the Associated Press, a strike today destroyed a house where dozens of displaced people were sheltering. At least 34 people were killed, including at least 6 children. An AP reporter at the hospital counted the bodies. Israel claims they must dismantle the extensive military infrastructure of Hamas after they launched their October 7th surprise attack, where militants killed some 1,200 men, women, and children. Although, as the Washington Post reports today, the militant group remains largely intact. Gaza civilians, however, are paying the price, with more than 15,000 killed so far, mostly women and children. A senior Israeli intelligence officer told an independent magazine in the region that the goal was to kill as many Hamas operatives as possible, for which the criteria around harming Palestinian civilians was significantly relaxed. According to the UN's humanitarian office, the past few days have brought some of the heaviest bombardments so far, leaving apocalyptic scenes in Gaza. NBC News reports that on Monday, the main telecom company said all services were shut down in central and southern Gaza. However, services were restored today. Humanitarian agencies and first responders have warned that blackouts jeopardize rescue efforts and the distribution of aid. Over the weekend, Vice President Kamala Harris conducted talks with regional players about the challenging issue of what happens after this is over. Several Biden administration sources told David Rothkopf of the Daily Beast that a key component will require a change of government in Israel. While few expect the government to be radically different from that of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, it is fair to say that all see his likely departure following cessation of hostilities in Gaza as a positive development. To that point, Netanyahu's corruption trial resumed on Monday. According to polling conducted in November, his popularity has plummeted in Israel. Last week, the New York Times reported that Israeli forces were warned of the October 7th attack more than a year ago. Many Israelis blame his government for the failure. And joining me now is David Rothkopf, columnist for the Daily Beast and host of the Deep State Radio podcast. David, good to see you. Let's talk about the Netanyahu factor. He is now facing a corruption trial. It was on hold while hostilities were being conducted, but it is back on. Talk a little bit about how the administration sees him, because they sure did bear hug him in the beginning.
Well, I think, to be fair, they bear hugged Israel. I think the response of the president was that the Israeli people had gone through a horrific trauma and that the United States, which has long been allied with Israel, would step up and defend its friend. I don't think there was any love lost between them and Netanyahu, even early on here. But what's happened over the course of the past couple of months is that Netanyahu has systematically ignored the warnings of the United States to stick within the rules of international warfare. And as you said, the toll in Gaza has been horrifically high. The problem is Netanyahu is very unpopular in Israel and is likely to lose his job when the fighting stops. So what does that mean for him? He wants the fighting to go on. He's got an incentive to drag this out. And of course, the longer he does that, the higher the toll in Gaza and the more tension between the United States and the Israelis. And I think that's a big problem that's looming days or weeks from now. And that is, when does this reach a breaking point? When can the United States no longer tolerate a situation? You know, you mentioned the number of deaths. Tens of thousands have been injured. 1.8 million Gazans out of 2.2 million have had to leave their homes. 100,000 buildings in Gaza have already been destroyed. And there's every sign that the fighting in the south is going to be more intense and the civilian tolls are going to be higher.
The change in the administration's rhetoric has been really led in some ways by Vice President Kamala Harris. I want to read what her message was, sort of behind the scenes to the Israelis. And it says the strong behind the scenes message to the Israelis is that as the Gaza campaign continues in the south, it must learn the lessons of the north. As for the West Bank, the conversation is said to have referenced U.S. concerns regarding Israeli settler efforts to appropriate more land in the region, as well as growing violence in the region between settlers and Palestinian residents. You know, we've seen settlement activity continue and really accelerate in the West Bank while Gaza is being pummeled and settlers attacking Palestinian residents and throwing them off of their land, et cetera, planting their flag and taking people's homes. Does the United States have any leverage to stop that? This is not something new. This has been going on for a long time. It's only an accelerated practice. Can the United States do anything about it?
Well, the United States has leverage, of course. The United States provides a lot of aid to Israel, and the United States is seen as Israel's key ally in the world. The United States could withhold some of that. Thus far, the United States has not been willing to do that. The question is, how far can Netanyahu push this administration? I think when the vice president was in the Middle East, she spoke with a whole array of regional leaders, plus the president of Israel, plus the head of the Palestinian Authority. And I think the message from the regional leaders was, we'd like to help look at a solution, but first the fighting has got to stop. Then there's got to be a political change, and it's got to affect both Gaza and the West Bank. And ultimately, we need to see both of those parts of the world under one authority. Netanyahu, for 20 years, has been trying to pry apart the Palestinian people, weaken them by pitting Hamas against the Palestinian authorities. And that's got to stop. There's no way to have a political solution unless there is one legitimate government speaking for the Palestinians.
We have the prospect of potentially having a president who is under multiple indictments. Here is what Netanyahu is facing: accusation of fraud and breach of trust. He and his wife received lavish payments from prominent individuals in return for political favors. Another fraud and breach of trust case is in exchange for favorable legislation, he would slow the growth of a rival newspaper. There's fraud, breach of trust, and bribery. Netanyahu granted regulatory favors to Israel's leading telecom company in exchange for positive coverage. If he gets convicted, then what?
Well, I think Netanyahu's going to have to leave office sooner rather than later. I think, at the end of this fighting, I think that maybe in a matter of a couple of months, he may only have a few months more than that. But once he leaves office, the question is what replaces him. It is unlikely to be a radically different government. It may not have him. It may not have some of his more odious cabinet members, but it is likely to still have a substantial component from the right, and it is still going to be resistant to the kind of changes that are necessary for long-term stability, and that has to do with getting to a two-state solution.
And that is the answer that everyone knows is the answer that no one can seem to get to. David Rothkopf, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.